All right, guys, we're back with another Modified Rides podcast. Today, I have a little different setup. We have two guests today. Today, I've linked up with the guys from PSI Conversions. I have John and Joe. What's going on, fellas?
Hey, how's it going?
What's up? How are you?
So, I want to first say, first of all, thanks for you guys coming on, taking the time out to dive into what all the company does. But second off, thank you guys for the support with the Blazer build this year. I mean, it means a lot to have some of the top companies like you guys involved in a build like that.
Sure. Yeah, we always try to help.
I mean, we're happy to be
others.
involved. We're both truck guys, and John's a Blazer guy.
Oh, are you? What's your weapon of choice? The round body or square body?
Well, I have a square body 77 that we bought a Roadster Shop chassis for.
Okay.
We're doing a Gen 5 L86 with a T56 Magnum, and we're gonna, we'll do some road racing with
lifted?
it. What's that?
You doing lifted, I guess, being Roadster Shop?
No, it's a two-wheel drive. We slammed it to the ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the Slam spec chassis.
Yeah.
Bagged or coilovers?
Coilovers.
Okay, that's what I'm doing. We're doing the Porterbuilt setup on mine. Mine's a 77 as well. I wanted to keep the gold trim, but with the colors of mine, that gold really didn't flow as well. So I'm opting to lose the 1 year only trim.
Yeah, we found this at C10 Nats about 3 years ago. We were just walking the swap meet while we were there, and a guy had it sitting there for, I don't know, like $2,500. And we went back and forth with him. I ended up getting the truck for about $1,200. And then our good friends down at ProTouringTexas.com, they're right there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They shipped it back for me.
Yeah.
It's been a slow, arduous process just because, work takes over. But, it's coming along. Right now I'm doing floors in it, which you may know is not an easy task because they don't sell a one-piece floor for it.
You talking about for the tub or the front?
For the front.
Okay. Yeah, I had a couple small pieces of mine that we got with AMD and used some C10 floors and cut out what we needed, and they worked, decent, but it wasn't a full floor. It's just the pieces.
This thing needed a full floor. That's how bad it was.
So I guess let's get in the story of who PSI Conversions is and where it started, whichever one of y'all want to take that.
So Joe and I went to college together for mechanical engineering, and we became friends in college. We were both into cars. Joe's a big Buick guy. I'm a big drag racing type guy. Like, I had Chevelles, Novas. My dad's got a 60 Corvette. And we graduated college and we shared a passion for cars. But you know how it is. You graduate college and it's off to work. And then the next thing you know, you're getting married and you're starting a family. And, Joe went to grad school right after college. I went into the workforce. And then eventually about, a couple years later, we tagged back up at an aerospace company we were working at. And, we were doing beach volleyball together. We were doing a bunch of stuff and we mess around with our cars. And then, one day we were sitting there at lunch and we were talking about an LT1, a Gen 2 LT1 conversion that I had done prior. And I'll digress 1 minute. Back in about 2000, so we graduated in 02. In 2000, we had I had a good friend of mine do an Excel DFI conversion on his Camaro. And that really got me started in just how much cooler fuel injection was. Not only did you get all the drivability and cold start, because we're up here in New Jersey where we get the Four Seasons, you got the performance, you got some fuel economy, although we weren't really that concerned about it back then when it was, 90 cents for a gallon of gas. But, it was just one of those things, like I thought it was pretty cool. And, I'd always been a carb guy, but I decided to do an LT1 in a 64 Biscayne, a car I still have actually. And, it was cool because it was like a small block Chevy, but it had fuel injection in it. So, Joe messed around with it with me and, so he had a carbureted 67 GS and I had this fuel injected Biscayne. Well, lo and behold, next thing you know, I did a 1986 El Camino. And then we're sitting there at work one day and he's like, we should think of something to do, some sort of side hustle, just, to make some money.
Where it all starts.
And I'm like, I don't know. You have twins and I had one kid at the time. And it's like, we're broke. It's like, well, what kind of business do you want to?
No money to do it. We've been trying to have a business, car-related business, since college.
And that's something
All kinds
most car guys would
of ideas.
that's everybody's goal. We want to have something in the car world. I mean, I
Yeah.
worked for Pepsi for 22 years, but still did the photography and all that stuff on the side. And then when I had the chance to step away, I'm like, let's go for it. So I think that's all car guys' dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where you spend all your time and money anyway.
Yeah,
So.
and you want to do something you love, that everybody said you have a passion for, and so he said, he's like, well, I'm like, what are we going to do? Because prior to that, as Joe just said, we had thought of something years prior of doing like Honda valve covers, and we're not Honda guys.
What year was this?
Well, that idea came about in what, like 03, 04, 04, I think that was.
Maybe
You're back
during
from
college.
Okay.
There was still some Honda stuff going around.
Well, see, I was a Honda guy from day one. All my friends were truck guys. My first build was an '88 CRX.
Yeah, we had
and they're cool.
Yeah,
and they're cooler now than I used to think they were.
But we had no background. I mean, we're sitting there trying to research what are these motors? These B motors, and this motor and that motor.
Yeah, I didn't know what JDM was, so we got a JDM valve cover, and we're going to make a sheet metal version of it, like a Moroso valve cover.
Yeah.
And
with my first one being a CRX, I started building it in '95. Went through a couple, I had the splatter paint and all that stuff, then stripped that. And then, that tells you what it was. Did full tweed interior, shaved everything. Being in that Honda world, I'm same thing. Like I tried to follow and learn what was what. And it was all pre JDM for me. Like I was into that style before all the Fast and Furious type stuff come out.
So we had, all of us had gone to the movie theater and watched Fast and Furious in 2000. And I'm the guy sitting there rooting for the Charger, for the freaking Supra. I didn't even know what the Supra was. I'm like, there's no way. And then how do you spin your tires and pull wheels at the same time? That made no sense to me. So, and then the name had come up actually our senior year or junior year of college. I think the name had come up. We came up with this, we were sitting there. I thought we were in fluids class. I could be mistaken. It's been so long ago, but I remember the name came up then, like that, everybody needs a performance system to integrate, and you could do anything with it. So that's where performance systems integration, which is PSI, and now everybody calls PSI Conversion. That's where it came from. So then we get past this Honda thing, which we never really did anything with except have meetings and drink. And then here, lo and behold, we're sitting there at our job, and he's like, well, what's something you did, that you couldn't find off the shelf? Because at the aerospace company, we did a lot of kitting. There's a lot of for spares and stuff, spares and repairs for other, for end users of the aircraft stuff we were making, the company was making. They did a lot of kitting. And, it was a big thing. Like, he had done a ton of stuff with Buicks. I did a ton of stuff with Chevy stuff, and nothing ever fit. Nothing ever was truly plug and play. It wasn't like your Fox Body Mustang buddy or your SN95 or, New Edge Mustang guy where things fit, or a Gen 5, fourth gen Camaro. Things fit.
Yeah. Now, is that what you guys did in the aerospace world? You made the harnesses and all that for?
No, we did design. We did design work. He was in the I don't know if we can say that. It was commercial aviation, so he did evacuation slide stuff. I did helicopter float design. Yeah, we were doing mechanical design stuff, but I had always been electrical. And I mean, it's electrical to us was kind of second nature. It was pretty straightforward to both of us. What a proper crimp was, how you didn't solder. We didn't solder in aerospace. You don't solder in automotive technically.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, you solder on boards, but solder's brittle, and we could get into that whole discussion, just the way joints, splices are done inside a harness, because, we have tooling where we're sonic welding now, or we've been sonic welding for years, but, that's a costly investment as opposed to using, like GM. If you've ever torn a GM harness apart from the 80s or 90s, you'll see some pretty funky splices in there. But so we were sitting there, and the first product, Joe's like, we should kit something, and the idea was, I said, well, when I did the 4L60 in that Biscayne, I needed a 2-position brake switch. I'm like, I couldn't find it. This is 2007. I guess it was 07. Yeah. So, you have the internet, but you have message boards, and, you had whoever was God on the message board, who nobody ever challenged that person.
Yeah.
And you sat there and you tried to look for schematics and stuff like that on there. And
And you hope you were
you
right.
hope stuff was right. It's
Yeah.
like a Facebook message or a Facebook group now. You get 1,000 different answers on something, and you're wondering what's right. Like, so I said, the brake switch. I said, I found the right brake switch, a factory style brake switch that would work, and it threaded right into the brake pedal of the Biscayne. And so him and I think that night we went down to the auto parts store and we got the brake switch. We got a pigtail for it. And then put it on eBay, and we sold
And so
the first one,
that was your guys'
first product.
first product.
Yeah, that was the first product, was that brake switch kit, and we still sell it today.
Actually,
So
everybody sells it now, which is
Yes.
hilarious, because you sit there and you look at a company like, there's a company that, I don't know if we really compete with them, but they've been around forever. I mean, they've been around for 40 years. And to see them selling a product you guys came up with at a lunch table it makes you feel good,
so
Yeah,
what
that
year was
$8
this?
investment was, what's that?
What year was this?
07?
I think it was earlier than that, to be honest with you, but somewhere in the early 2000s time frame.
And you like that? I guess that took off pretty quick, or was it
So
slow?
that was, we bought one for pictures and then had them on eBay. So it cost like $8, to do the first one, and our wives thought we were so stupid.
Yeah.
So
They always do.
listed one part, for the LT1 swap. From there, we got into doing the first main harness product was the LT1 harness. Yeah. So, dug into GM schematics and figured out what it is you need and don't need when you do the swap. And make sure everything is arranged, so you can actually do a swap, because that's kind of the big thing about us. We use all the stuff we sell. It's stuff that's easy for us to install. We've changed lengths and things so it works. In that case, there's a couple different versions of LT1, so stuff's disconnectable, with the different OptiSparks and things like that.
So how long did you guys keep your job and keep this as a side hustle before you said, all right, we're doing enough to go full force?
Oh, a long
Yeah,
time.
too long.
Yeah, too long. It's like I'm a worrier. So it's like, where's the EPA going with this? Where are electric cars going? Where's getting knocked off from Chinese stuff? So
it was one of those things where, like, we could have grown probably even more than we did, like faster, if we would have let go of the day stuff earlier.
But it's nice to have that comfort of a guaranteed paycheck.
But it's
especially when you have a wife and kids.
That's why I stayed at Pepsi so long. I would work, 50 to 70 hours a week and then be gone every weekend to shows and photo shoots. And it's like, I could not shoot this weekend, but I know I'm still going to have a check come in. So that's totally understandable.
I think what's ironic, Joe touched on the whole LT, Gen 2 LT thing. Originally our website was lt1conversion.com, because I know me, for instance, I'm like, this LS thing isn't going to work. It's too, it's not easy to put in the car because, the geometry's different. It's not like a small block Chevy. That's
difficult at the time. I remember when we first talked to to Brent.
Yeah.
He was one of the original guys, they have adapters, for the motor mounts, and then, accessory drives that would work with your old, power steering pump and stuff. So it wasn't easy, say 20 years ago as it is now.
It was 20 years ago. Yeah.
Now when you do anything, it's like, all right, do you need an LS or an LT mount?
Yes.
With my suspension, which one did we need?
Yeah, and lo and behold, you look at the LS market. It's just, I remember going to Jessel. We had this idea we were going to pitch to Jessel that, to see if they could use any of our stuff. And we're, maybe 2 years old, 3 years old. We're fledgling business owners, and here we are. I'm sitting there with Dan Jessel, who's like a legend, and a friend of ours we went to college with actually worked for them. He still works for them as an engineer. And I remember Dan telling me, he goes, it was me and his business manager. And I was there for about 3 hours. And I remember sitting down, and Dan said to me in the nicest way, he goes, look, this LS thing is never going to take off. He goes, it's a Ford cylinder head on Chevy bore spacing with a Chrysler bottom end. He goes, you're never going to make power like a big box Chevy, because that was his mindset. And I remember he left the meeting, and I remember his business manager being like, well, Dan's got his opinion. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, I'm like, what am I doing here? And then about an hour later, he comes back in and he's like, but if you need anything, you want to use our dyno, you want you want to come in on the weekends, you're more than welcome. We'll help you guys out because they were right down the street from us. And it was the nicest guy in the world, God rest his soul. But I've ever heard him say that to me. He's like, yeah, this is never going to go anywhere, and here we are. That was probably like '08 time frame when we had that
That's also
meeting.
the same mindset where the magazine industry is like, oh no, the internet's not going to affect us. Like, it's two different markets. Where now it's killing the other markets. So
Yeah, so we've grown with that LS market, obviously doing the early Gen 3s and later Gen 3s, and you spend a lot of time on R&D, what throttle body works with what computer and what TAC module for Gen 3. A lot of what we do is getting all that tune stuff to work. And if you know GM stuff, it's been all over the place throughout the years. GTO is different than truck, is different than Corvette.
Now, like when you started with the one and then you go to the next version, I guess you get an engine in hand to see what you need lengthwise and all that stuff.
Yes, yeah, that's how it starts. And we were fortunate too to have some local dyno shops nearby with swaps and stuff themselves. So
Yeah.
that helped along the
So
way.
like the basic harness like layout, it's we tell people all the time, it's the engine that drives. If for most of our applications, we've grown into a lot of niche type applications for vehicles because as
Okay.
people start swapping things like Nissan's is a perfect example where you have people that own a 350Z or a G35 Infinity want everything to work and they want it to be truly plug and play. So we do have these niche, call them harnesses that are truly plug and play, but the overwhelming majority of the market needs a standard standalone harness because they have a vehicle that was never run on a computer, or it was run like, let's say your 88 to 98 OBS Chevy trucks. It was run on a rudimentary, ECU at the time,
Yeah.
the
Very minimal.
TVI type setup where you can rip all that stuff out and everything can still function. Plus, you have
Yeah.
companies like Dakota that are offering gauge clusters that they're going to work with the GM CAN bus and the electronics. So it becomes plug and play through various options, which obviously we're a one-stop shop now where we're selling everything. We're selling gauge clusters, fuel systems, brackets, as well as the harnesses. So you can do one-stop shopping with us. But that harness layout really, as Joe touched upon it earlier, where we've tweaked things to accommodate the market, but for the most part, that layout that we started in the mid 2000s, early 2000s, hasn't really changed. And if anything, the market has kind of adopted it. They've adopted those lengths. Gotcha.
Like it was our idea. We pull all the power from the big stud on the starter because there's a battery cable going there. That's all then fusible links that's protected. And we wanted the fuse block inside the passenger compartment and the computer. So if you see anyone else that does that, we were like the first people to do that specific kind of layout. Ideal lengths, you don't have to go changing sensors and things like that. So we'll make a harness for whichever type of map sensor you have, whichever throttle body you have. But that whole layout, that's hate to say it's on Alibaba now too. It's ours.
Yeah. I mean, they had my cell phone number. I don't want to talk about Chinese stuff, but when that Chinese stuff came out and I'm getting phone calls on my cell phone and I'm like, wait, you bought a harness from us, blah, blah, blah. They're looking for tech support. And I'm like, well, can I have the order number, name, or, did you buy it through the site or over the phone? I got it on Amazon. I'm like, well, we don't sell on Amazon. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe one of our resellers is throwing stuff on there or whatever. And then I start looking and I'm like, are you kidding me? And I couldn't believe it. They had copied our original instruction. We hadn't used that phone number in a decade. And they copied, and they had my cell phone number on the freaking thing for tech support.
Did you ever get a hold of one of the harnesses to see how?
Yeah, we've gotten them throughout the years, and obviously it's not automotive grade wire. It's not actual. Delphi makes almost all the stuff, the connectors. It's not the same. So the connectors, they're molded plastic and there's fiber in there. All these knockoff ones aren't done that way. John mentioned that the sonic weld where you kind of vibrate the wires together. That kind of stuff isn't done in there. Just
anything to cut costs.
A to Z, it's inferior. It costs us, way more to build a harness than you could go buy one of those for. Besides the 99 cent an hour labor,
Yeah.
It's all the cheap
Yeah, which
parts
is
too.
shocking to me. It's like you have all this cheap labor and you're skimping on parts. You're just gonna
Yeah.
and it's funny because well, it's not funny. It's kind of sad, but you could look at our American competitors. And again, I haven't looked at all my competition's harnesses or anything like that, but you can look at the American ones, and if everybody makes stuff out of the same, or should be making stuff out of the same stuff, right? It should be TXL, GXL style, cross polyethylene linked wire. You should be using GM, active connectors is the majority of them now. Used to be Delphi. You're crimping with good tools or with automated tooling. You're using sonic welds to make your splices because splices are factory. And then, maybe there's certain nuances to harnesses, whether it's the coverings. We like braid. We
Yeah.
also offer convoluted tubing for people that want to save a little bit of money. But some people like to do heat shrink. Some people, everybody to each their own there. But for the most part, the harnesses, short of the quality control, the components should be relatively the same.
Yeah.
Then you get into quality and you get into post-sales, well, pre-sales and post-sales customer support. And to me, that's, where Joe and I kind of founded this company, was on the idea that, people, if you ever saw Office Space,
Yeah.
you've seen it,
Yeah.
you can buy,
I'm old enough to have seen that.
what's that?
I'm old enough to have
So
seen that.
so people can buy a hamburger. They can go buy a hamburger anywhere. They come to
Yeah.
Tchotchkes for the smile and the flair. It's the same idea. You come to PSI because you're looking for value. Are we the cheapest? No. Joe just brought up the Alibaba stuff, and people
Yeah.
can go on Amazon and pick your poison. But if you really want great value, that's why people come to us, and that's why people come back. And are we infallible? Absolutely not. We have an automated, we use automated Cirrus testers to test our harnesses. We crimp with machines. There are probably several things that we do hand crimp with. And can mistakes be had? Of course they can. We do a lot of volume. However, we've never not stood behind our product. And we've never not supported somebody when they call up and say, hey, I have a dead throttle issue. And we walk them through the steps. Why do you have a death? And I don't ask them to email us. We don't ask them to just chat with us through the website, although you can do both of those options. You could talk to a
Yeah.
real live person in the United States with, I don't know, what's Gary got? 40 years at GM
Yeah.
experience as an ATEC. I mean, he's seen it all, and he's talked to tens of thousands of people, I'm sure, at this point. And we're there to support the product. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, we 9 times out of 10 when somebody has an issue, it's installation error.
Yes.
And
The lack of knowledge on
yeah,
how
and it's
to.
not because people.
Well,
Yeah,
the alternator might be painted. The brackets are powder coated, so the ground's really
yeah,
good. You have LED taillights. You skip the ground. I just go over grounds because grounds are the typical issue. Your mass airflow might be installed
yeah,
backwards. There, those or you. Right, you got what year? We're like a '94 Volvo, and you're trying to get your gauges to work. Well, we help you figure out that stuff too.
yeah,
So, because it's interesting, we're like, you're doing something cool, but we want to be part of
yeah.
helping figure that stuff.
And that's the thing. I mean, we pride ourselves on going the extra mile to try to do those things for people. And I want to kind of get back to your question a little bit ago where you asked, so I assume you get one of these engines in and then you figure out what's going to work. Well, a lot of the issues people have to do with the accoutrements to the engine. So as Joe said earlier, the pedals, TAC modules, if it's a Gen 3 drive-by-wire, so that's your throttle actuator control module. GM was notorious. It was almost like Chevy, Corvette, Cadillac, truck, and van were different corporations. And they didn't know, it was like the government. It's like they didn't know how to, they didn't know how to commonize their parts.
Yeah.
The stuff all looked the same, but it didn't function the same. You can have you have PCMs that have just completely different operating systems in them. And then you look at Nissan, and Nissan, everything's the same. The Quest has the same exact engine as the 350Z. The cams just change, but the engine's the same. And it really makes our life as PSI difficult because you have people, well, I got it out of an Envoy, or I got it out of an Isuzu, or or I got the engine out of a Savannah van, or everything's an LS1 and everything's an LS3. That's the other two common things from customers. And it's like, well, what was the engine out of? Oh, it was out of a 2004 Silverado. Okay, well, it's not an LS1. It's it's slightly different.
Or LQ9,
yeah. So
well, it's like when I went through trying to figure out what we were doing with this Blazer, I'm one of those ones. When I dive into something, I research the damn it out of it. Like I'm overly Googling, overly following stuff, and my builder's the same way. You're talking about people like, oh, well, you can get something cheaper and this and that. I'm a firm believer. Buy once, cry once. You're not having to chase issues and fix stuff. People in the air ride industry is the same way. Like, oh, I got this cheap compressor. All right, cool. Call me in 2 months when that quits working, and you should have bought this other brand that made more sense.
Yeah.
So, and when I come across you guys, and my builder's one of those ones. If I say, hey, I want to use this part, and if it's something that he's like, no, I'm not, he won't let me use it. Like he's one of my best friends, so we talk straight about it. But he's like, I'm not putting that in your vehicle. Let's use this. Let's use this company. Let's use that. So me and him come together. We come across. He'd use some of y'all's stuff. Some other jobs before mine, and that's why I reached out to you guys. It's like y'all seem to make the product that's going to fit with what I need. I don't want a 50-year-old vehicle that I'm going to drive 30 minutes down the road and it die on me because something's wrong on it.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Yeah.
So having the right parts to make stuff like you guys do is why I reached out to you guys, because I wanted something that, for one, looked good, and two, it performed like it should.
Sure. And
I know people pulled harnesses off for your guys. So
yeah, and we're getting to that point now where there's a lot of the LS has been around since '97. People have been swapping it pretty heavily since, say, the mid 2000s, like maybe 2008-ish time frame. So you're looking at 17 years of LS swaps where we all know these vehicles get recycled. They somebody builds them, maybe they use something cheap on it and it's not working right for them, and rather than try to fix it, they just throw it on Marketplace and they want to get rid of it. And then next thing you know, we get a phone call, hey, it's been LS swapped, but we have an issue with the harness, and they'll call us up and we'll ship them a harness to go on a vehicle that's already been LS swapped. We run into that quite often, actually.
So how does the LT market for you guys compare to the LS market? Are you starting to see more of the LT stuff come into play? A lot of people are scared of it because it's a different platform. Nothing off the LS works on it.
I mean, Joe can answer part. I mean, I'll say this. I mean, we're doing an LT1 right now, a true LT1 that we're throwing in a test truck that we have. And then I have this L86 that I threw in the Blazer chassis, but the Blazer's unfortunately not nearly where I want it to be. But the LT, I think the accessory drive, I don't know if Joe would agree, but the accessory drive to me seems to be one of the trickier things to get to work, because it's just totally different. Like that stock water pump is kind of
yeah. There's more options than there used to be, but we've had a Gen 5 in the shop truck since 2017, 18. So we used Brent stuff at the time, which used an LS3 pump, but that kind of stuff's intimidating. Manifolds, headers are different. At the time, no one even made an oil pan, but the motors, besides that they need lifters, they're super cheap because people are afraid of them. You can get a 5.3 or 6.2 way cheaper, and they're all lower miles than you can pick up a Gen 4 for. And when we just had stock 5.3 in there, to me it felt like a 6-liter. That direct injection, what's it, 340-ish horsepower, so that felt like a bigger engine. So they're torquey, they're
better transmission options. I mean, that's yeah. I mean, Joe's got a 10-speed. He can talk about that. He's got a 10-speed in his race truck. But
I have now Gen 4 with the 10-speed. But the 10, you see a Camaro, 6-speed to 8-speed, and you pick up a bunch of mile an hour and a couple tenths by going to 10-speed. That trans is awesome. It's the same first 7 gears basically as that BMW trans everyone's in love with, and it shifts super fast. You got the ability to tap. So the fact that you can do manual, you can do 4-speed, 6-speed, 8-speed, and 10-speed on Gen 5, means there's so many people interested. And there's a lot of guys, like we talked about LS being around a while. there's guys that have an LS and now they're going to LT. So we'll sell a second harness to that person because now they're doing a Gen 5. They want something new and different.
Well, that's why my builder, he had a LT4 Gen 5 and then the LT1 going, and same customer, two different trucks. And he's like, man, that's the route. He's like, if you're going to do this Blazer, we need to do LT1. And he's like, it's going to cost a little more up front. Some of the options are different, but you're going to get better power. You got the 10-speed transmission. You're going to get better highway. He's like, and I was like, all right, well, let's find one. So that's why I found that pull out, and just happened to be what I needed, and went from there.
Yeah, and we've seen it over the course of the last 20 years. We've seen where the LT1, the Gen 2 was popular. Then all of a sudden the LT1 became less popular and the Gen 3 was popular. Then all of a sudden the Gen 4 started getting popular and the LT1 started disappearing, and the Gen 3s were, losing a little traction. The Gen 3s are still popular, but Gen 4s are very popular, and the Gen 5s are definitely picking up steam. The market itself just keeps growing.
When you guys, to step back a little bit, when you guys first started the company, were you two guys like working in one of your garages or something, making all these harnesses, or how did the grassroots start?
Yeah, no, that's exactly how it starts. With a piece of plywood and a bunch of nails and screws and tape measure to do the layout, and quarter-inch wire and crimpers. And,
I mean, we got a video of the first one we ever started.
Making some mistakes, obviously. You're like, oh, is it this connector or is it that? And I'm not sure. You got to order a bunch of each until you figure it out.
So you're like the Microsoft and all that, where they started in the garage behind their house and trying to.
Yeah, that's exactly. I think that was actually the quote. I think that was the quote in the video when we started the first one, because we started it on a Gen 2 LT1 that I think it was yours, right, Joe? It was a B-body one.
Yeah. I couldn't sell my Roadmaster wagon, so I picked up I couldn't have, but I picked up a Caprice wagon that was better. But I couldn't sell it, so we pulled the motor out.
And we pulled the gas and the gas tank. We used
the gas tank and the fuel lines and everything.
And then I used a Jeep. I had a Jeep column, so I had a Jeep column that we used to start it.
Yeah, just no car.
Yeah, it was just on the ground.
Fuel tank and steering column,
and it started right up.
So I guess with the engineer background, I guess that's what helped you guys figure stuff like that out quicker.
Well, I
think so.
I think that helped us with the manufacturing side of things. I think we both
documentation, that kind of stuff. Yeah. The importance of
like
now you said the first one you had a piece of plywood with a bunch of nails to lay stuff out. Is that the same process that you use now, or do you have some automated system that handles it?
Well, it's a little more involved now. Like that one was laying down. We had that flat on a bench, like on a bench in the middle of the shop, and then we just laid it out.
We printing the whole layout board. It was all electronic, but you can't get around the 2+ hours of labor. For people that are knowledgeable to string out the harness. There's things that have to be done by hand, unless I don't even know what kind of volume you need, but. A lot of OEM stuff is done either in this country or even down in Mexico, for it's not built here. Like in the Carolinas, all that BMW.
I'm like 2 hours or an hour and a half from the BMW plant. I keep saying I need to go down and do a tour of it, but I just, something always comes up and I never make it. So
it'd be cool to go there. I mean, we lost all the plants up here. They used to be there, right, John? When we were kids.
Yep.
Had a lot of.
So whereabouts you are in New York, right?
New Jersey.
Yeah. New Jersey. Okay. Whereabouts in New Jersey?
The Jersey Shore.
So, we're both by the beach here. You've seen the TV show.
Snooki, your neighbor? Like, what are we?
She's not far away.
I've seen her a couple times.
Yeah.
That was one of my daughter's favorite shows growing up. I'm like, why are you watching this?
Yeah, no, it's right. It's right down the road from our shop. There those crazy. That's the crazy. College summer stuff.
Yeah.
But we both like it. Parts of New Jersey you wouldn't believe are, as quiet as they are.
I know there was a big truck show up there this past weekend, the Atlantic City truck invasion.
Okay.
So a lot of the lifted stuff was up there.
Okay.
So I got one of the guys, Mark, that I had on the podcast runs that show. So, it's a lot of the big wheel companies and stuff are up there for that. So, how long did it take before you guys started hiring employees?
Oh, That's a great question.
I mean, other than having to put your
Well,
wives
so
to
no,
work.
so what we did originally is we were lucky we had friends. So we'd had friends that came and worked with us on the weekends or at night. And
Yeah,
then
like Jerry, who's
yeah,
IT computer guy and the big car guy
yeah.
and just a big guy in general. He was,
Trading out for beer and pizza, trying to
No, well,
come help.
eventually,
yeah, that kind of.
yeah, and eventually we'd pay, and but it was one of those things. Like, I mean, it was really, um, doing sales and tech support in our spare time. Spare time on
Like
breaks.
yeah, like stuff would ship, once a week, like on Saturday or Sunday, or we'd work Sunday and then it would be ready to go out Monday. So
Yeah,
it worked that way for quite a while.
yes.
With weekend, with people that had full time jobs that were helping us on the weekend.
Yeah,
What was
First, I guess
the
Keith might have been our first full time employee.
I
I don't
think
even remember.
I think Keith was our first full-time employee. Wow.
and how many employees do you have now?
There, just about 20.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
like 20-ish.
Yeah.
It fluctuates. Some people are remote from COVID and have stayed remote, but
Yeah.
What was the breaking point that you said, all right, this is it, we have to go full force?
I guess when we got the building, when we actually got a building, we used to rent. So we worked out of the house for a while, for a number of years, the first couple of years, and then we started renting. So we rented in an industrial park, and then we made that bigger, and then it just became cost prohibitive, and we're like, well, I guess we got to go buy something, and we got to go all in on this. And that's what we did.
Yeah, we're both pretty cheap, so that rent is like a killer. I'd rather pay the rent to myself, but at that point it gets serious.
But was that the time that y'all both quit the quote unquote day job?
You've got to pay for this building. So
What was that?
When you got the building, is that when y'all quit the quote unquote day job?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people that want to start a business like you guys did, to hear y'all's story, to know that, okay, well, we still did X, Y, and Z to make this happen. It is possible. You just have to have the drive to go through and do it.
I think.
Yeah, that's why we're both gray, I think. So.
I think the big thing for people to know that are listening, I mean, if you do it when you're younger, it's a lot easier than as you get older. Because as you get older, especially if you have kids and you're trying to, there's more risk there. You sit there psychologically, you say to yourself, I have kids to support, I have a family, it's much better to do when you're younger. If you're 23, 24 years old, out of college and you're looking to take that jump, I would rather do it when you're 24. Don't do it when you're 34.
Well, I know my daughter was already in college when I decided to quit my full-time job to do what I'm doing full-time. So of course that was a little easier, I guess you'd say, but
I mean, that's,
I guess
that's the other option is
doing
it when you're in your
doing
60s.
it by yourself is what makes things hard.
Yeah.
I'd say, you've got to do what you like and what you think is a good business, because no one forces you to start a business. No one says you have to do an LS business.
You don't have the 20 employees right off the bat, so
yes,
you just have to get to that.
But things easier with two in the way they were, But nowadays you got to know, how to have an internet business and a technical car business and do some social media and figure out shows and human resources. There's all kinds of stuff that.
It's all this stuff. It's all the stuff that grows. So as the business grows, it's not just growing where you're saying, yeah, Joe, that's a good idea. Let's go do it. It's okay. Well, how does this fit in with the rest of the cogs in the wheel? Is sales involved? Is marketing involved? Is supply chain involved? Is production involved? And, developing and again, back the day job, being engineers and working in manufacturing, I think that's where that helped us in the business. Being car guys is what motivated us and gave us the idea and allows us to relate to our customer. But working in a manufacturing environment and understanding engineering changes and change board and quality control and
just coming from that aerospace environment in particular,
yes,
it's and safety systems, they have to work 100% every time they need to work.
Yeah.
So
I guess the aerospace industry is probably a little more strict and more medical-ish versus a regular automotive
Yes.
world.
Well, it also kind of falls in line with the market we're in too, because remember, automotive, I mean, you look at it, that stuff runs, it's amazing what car manufacturers can do. The fact that they can build what they build in such a short amount of time from cradle to grave, and it works every time, or it needs to work every time, no matter where you are in the world. Aerospace, planes are built, they're hand built, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah.
They're hand built. And it aerospace aligns more, I think, with what we do, because it's I don't want to call it niche, but it is niche, in the global scheme of things compared to automotive. You're not moving how many 737, bad example, how many A320s is Airbus selling a year compared to how many Silverados is GM selling a year.
Yeah.
So, but that background really helped us tremendously. And that's anybody listening that is looking to do something in the automotive world, having that experience, you don't have to be an engineer. I mean, having that experience where you're dealing, even in a small fab shop or something like that. I mean, you're building to print, you're modifying prints, keeping control of modification of those prints, that whole engineering change process, and dealing with different people of different backgrounds, whether it's your supply chain person or your marketing person, understanding how to communicate with those people and realizing that, team, together everyone achieves more. I mean, it really is a team. I mean, that's the best part to me about our company, is the fact that everybody in their own way is contributing to the company. I mean, even Joe and I, we're not identical people. We both bring something different to the table.
But it meshes well, is the way it sounds.
Most of the time.
Understand that as well.
Yeah, we have great employees that are car people, right? Wrenching every night, more than we even do now.
Yeah.
And then there's great employees that are not into that, but there is a difference. The people that are, coming in a little dirty or, tired from working on their car last night. Well, they're really into figuring that stuff out for us, and they're great employees, and hopefully they see that in us, that, when you start, you need all that documentation, because one day it kind of grows and grows and grows. And if you don't have that base layer of being organized and a process for changing the drawing or an instruction, that it's chaos, and then you're the only one that can do anything. You're the only one that can kind of hold it together one day, and you don't want to be in that.
Now, are both of y'all still hands-on when it comes to some of the production stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, you still have to be and can be, which is nice.
Yeah.
Now you said you started with that one part, the brake switch. How many parts of your own, not stuff you sell from other people, but how many of your own parts do you have now?
Ooh.
Trick question.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it is a trick question, because there was a point where if you had an L33, we made you an L33 harness, compared to an LQ4, compared to an LQ9, compared to an LM7. So we had part numbers for all of that. Then we realized, well, you might have a Saab 9.7 engine, but you put an intake from a Camaro on there, so now it's not that engine anymore. So basically we're broken down to each generation and each trans type, and then we finish the harness for what your combo is. I mean, harness wise, there's maybe 20 different combos, and then we sell a bunch of extensions and adapters to do different things. If you have a supercharger, if you're moving your gas pedals somewhere else because it's rear engine, or it's in an airboat.
Yeah.
We do some mechanical parts, pedal mounts, and things like that too.
So we've reduced part numbers. So just to make it quicker. That was one of again, that was a major tenet when we started the company, was how can we give people good cost, schedule, performance, right? Those are the three metrics. And how can we give them quicker lead times? Because when we got into the market, there was maybe, I don't know, three main competitors, and everybody had still to this day, some of our competitors have pretty long lead times. And I'm not knocking my competitors by any means. I'm just saying, they have long lead times. It's just how their business model works.
Yeah, we have a different.
So our business model is to provide, to keep stuff on the shelf to a certain level of configuration. And then, as Joe said, we've simplified the ordering process by reducing the part number count. So now you go on and you look at a Gen 3 and you select the things you have or the things you want to use. So you might have an LS1 out of a Camaro, right? Call it a 2000 Camaro. It's got 3-pin MAF on it, EV1 injectors. Okay, well, you're going to start there and you're going to say, you know what, I want to do a 5-pin MAF from a truck because it's going to look cleaner. And, I put bigger injectors on it because, and they're not EV1s anymore, they're EV6s. And you can just select those options right on the site. And now all of a sudden, we already have it built to a certain configuration because that's part of our production planning. And then what happens is the order comes through, it ends up in basically in finalization in our mod department. It gets completed, it gets quality checked, gets packaged, goes in the box with the rest of whatever else you ordered, and it gets shipped to you within, a couple of days, as opposed to weeks.
It's kind of like buying one of these builder grade houses where they have everything and then you just go through and add your colors and your finishes and stuff. Like it's there, but it's not complete.
Correct. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good analogy of it because the guts of it is the same.
Yeah. What's y'all's usual lead time for most of your harnesses?
3 days.
Yeah, we tried it like in that week. So, if you order today, we'd like you to it out the door by Wednesday.
One of the things I thought was cool about you guys, like you offered the computers themselves. Or like mine, when I bought mine, I actually had the computer and the trans computer and all that. So it made it easier to send you guys that stuff to Flash versus trying to made another one. So you guys offer every part. If someone buys a raw stripped down engine, you can get it running, right?
Yeah, that's kind of the way we prefer to sell it all, is as a kit with the pedal, with mess air, with the computer that we know works, or you can send your computer in.
And
that way, right off the bat, we know it's got the right operating system for your transmission, for that map sensor, for that mass airflow sensor, for your injectors, those couple of things that are going to keep it from starting and just keep it from running. You can always, ideally you get something, tuned locally, because every combo is different, whether you have headers and a 3-inch exhaust for, so that kind of stuff. There's always some, drivability to be had there and a little bit of power, but it's important that it solves a lot of, issues on our end, knowing that the simple stuff like the anti-theft is turned off, but also that engine and trans are going to talk to each other correctly, especially on Gen 4 and Gen 5 stuff.
Which I guess you need those to work together, because if not, you're not going anywhere.
Exactly. Yep.
No, you'll be stuck in limp mode, dead throttle, no start, all types of issues.
Yeah, that was one of the things that held me back from building a classic for all these years, because everything I've built's been brand new, no miles on it, because I was scared of putting something in an older vehicle and it not working. Like I got friends, it don't run, it don't start, this leaks, this does that. And it's like, if I'm going to do this and do it to my level, I'm going to do it right with the right parts, the right companies, where I don't have to question it. I mean, my builder's 34 hours across the country. I can't just have him stop by the house on a Tuesday to, or run it by his shop. So,
I mean, the important thing to remember, and most of what we sell is factory electronics. You can think of it, as your 2018 truck. Yeah. So if you're going to throw headers on your truck, you probably know that someone should tune it also. If for some reason the throttle's going dead, the first thing you would do in your truck is go get the scanner, whatever, the $15 Bluetooth scanner, your $1,000 scanner. Get the scanner, plug it into that OBD2 port. It's going to tell you a lot about what's going on. Or even reading, coolant temp correctly. Is the air coming in correct? Does the pedal work? Does the throttle work? Those kind of things. Some people forget because it's a swap and think it's, something space age.
Yeah.
And
that's typically where you go if there is a problem.
And if you do have those problems, again, we're a phone call away. We pride ourselves on that.
Yeah. Now I know you'd mentioned earlier that you wasn't sure when you first got into it, like where the electric world was going to go and this and that. So thinking of the electronic side of it, all these companies that are doing all these over the air updates and a subscription to have heated seats and all this stuff they're doing, I guess that makes harness stuff a challenge for you guys for a lot of the new stuff that's coming out now, correct?
Yeah, definitely. It takes a while for, say the 8 speeds and 10 speeds or the newer GM computers. We do basically all GM stuff to be able to get unlocked and be tunable. I mean, a lot of our R&D right in recent years has been, can we get this newer gen trans to work with the older computers. So we figure out stuff like that too, because something isn't unlocked yet. So
Why are these manufacturers putting so many locks on the computers now, though?
I mean, I think that's obvious. They're following aerospace, which is you want to sell spares. You don't want to sell, they'll sell the car. They want to lease you the car. They don't want to sell you a car. They want you in a new car every 3 years. That's that whole right to repair John Deere thing from, what was that, 10 years ago? You familiar with that? So John Deere, so in that industry of farming, they run multiple CAN bus systems in one combine. They'll run like 3 or 4 CAN bus systems. And I thought it was about 10 years ago, but it ended up going to court because what was happening is John Deere would not allow independent repair facilities to have their software to talk to their systems. So that forced you back to the dealership. Well, the problem was you had guys that had, several $1 million worth of combines that needed to harvest. And the dealership didn't have enough manpower to fix it. So they're like, hey, it's going to be like a month or 2 months before we get to you. And they
stuff has to be cut before
and
then.
and it ended up going to court, and it was it's called right to repair. And I believe John Deere lost in it. But if you read the fine print on a lot of newer vehicles, you are licensing the software that's in that vehicle. And I don't know where it stands legally, but it's, fortunately for us, I mean, you're talking like new, last 3 years type of stuff. So the majority of our market is older than that. But eventually it's going to come down to, do we go to, some of the things we're working on right now is aftermarket controllers and just building harnesses for aftermarket controllers. So does it go there? Or do the courts get involved and companies like HP Tuners and those types of software companies continue to build software products that allow us to tune these factory controllers? And I mean, that's something I do want to touch on if we have time we started out on the Gen 2 LT1s doing, the 051 LT1 PCM. Okay. And that computer at the time we used TunerCat, they're still around. That's the software we use to turn off the anti-theft and update the tire size and gear ratio, do some other changes to the computer for a swap. Eventually, as we got into the LS stuff, we started using HP Tuners, which we've been using HP Tuners for pretty much, at least the last 15, 20 years. Great product. You always had Excel DFI. You had, if you've ever heard of these, like big stuff. You had Dominator, Holly Dominator. Over the last 10 years or so, you've started to see more and more aftermarket controllers, specifically like, the Terminator. The Holly Terminator is extremely popular. And one of the big questions we get, whether it's over the phone or we, at the shows we go to, which we're the show sponsor for Holly LS Fest East. And we do all the Holly LS Fest shows. It's a great time. If you've never been to one, highly recommend it, especially East in Kentucky. It's a true festival about, as Joe likes to say, it's about an engine.
You know who's not there? General Motors. The people that make millions in a year.
And we go to LS Fest and it's great, but like one of the biggest questions we get, whether it's at LS Fest or it's over the phone or on a forum or wherever it is why use a factory controller? Why not just use Terminator? And a lot of the market doesn't, there's a difference. It's more money for a Terminator setup, first of all. And then obviously Dominator is even more expensive. And then you have, you have Haltech now is a pretty popular. The Nexus is a really popular system. HP Tuners is coming out with their own system. There's a bunch of them out there. The best piece of advice we could give you if you're getting into a swap, into an LS or an LT swap, is what is your plan? What do you want the vehicle to do? Is this grandpa's square body or OBS that you've inherited and you just want to drive it, or maybe bring it to car shows? Maybe you're on a budget. You just want to enjoy LS power, or is it something you're going to race? Is it something you're really going to go, balls to the wall and you're going to throw a ton of boost at it or a ton of nitrous, or you need all types of inputs and outputs to achieve the goals you're trying to achieve? Be honest with yourself, and then you can make a very clear decision. The GM electronics are There are tens of millions of dollars, if not more, of R&D over the last 40 years that have gone into these controllers now. For the most part, they are bulletproof. They are bulletproof. You throw it on the ground, you're going to pick it back up, and it's going to be usable. We have,
Yeah, I mean, they live under the hood of a truck for 300,000-400,000
yes,
miles.
correct. And you can get a lot of performance out of them. Any tuner that uses HP tuners, you can find on, Facebook or TikTok or just at your local car show or in your town. It's going to tell you the same thing. They can make tons of power. We have a 9-second Nova. My father owns a Nova. It's called Blue Balls because it's painted blue and it takes a lot of balls to drive. And that car runs 985s all day, and it's on a factory GME 38 with a Gen 4 motor. And the Terminator and the aftermarket controllers absolutely have their place. If you're going to run big boost, you want other types of inputs, outputs, those types of things, absolutely do they make sense. But I would venture to guess, just based on the people, Joe and I and the team talk to, especially at shows, the overwhelming majority of people don't need to spend that extra money on that. And not only that, I would argue that you get a better quality harness than what Holley offers you, or some of the the aftermarket controllers offer you. I can't speak to all of them, but Terminator is so popular. That's the big fish in the pond when it comes to aftermarket controllers right now. The harness is not the quality of our harness, and the controller, quite frankly, is not the quality of a GM controller. And lastly, the tech support, the after sales support. I can only speak for us, is not nearly as good as ours. And it's just something your listeners need to understand. And I'm not saying the Terminator is not a good product. It is a good product, but it has a different market purpose or focus than the GM controller market does. And again, I touched on it earlier. We are working on a Holley harness, right? A harness to work with the Holley computer right now.
Yeah, and we make Holley stuff for other people right now. I'm running a Holley in my race truck. I was running a factory computer. Figured, why not beat up this Holley for a while? And I had the Holley issues. The battery got low. I cranked it, and then the throttle wouldn't work anymore. So luckily, I had my laptop to reset the TPS. That's kind of their fail-safe. But there's things about it that are great. It catalogs all the time. So if I want to see what I'm doing on a run, I can do that.
I had a truck at SEMA I was supposed to shoot one year, and his battery died while he was at the show and started it back and lost everything. And he's like, well, I guess we're going to have to shoot it some other time. So.
Yes. Yeah, so if you if you want to take your car to a car show and you got the door open a lot and battery may go dead, that's not a problem with the factory electronics. If you want to change your constantly changing boost pressure or something, or you're gonna have a bunch of add-ons to control a nitrous stage, well then the Terminator or Holtec is probably going to be cheaper and better and easier to tune. If you want to be the tuner and gain all the knowledge, the Holley and the whole aftermarket stuff is slightly easier than than the factory stuff to tune. If you put your engine together, it's going to stay that way, for the foreseeable future. Nothing's going to run as good as your 2015 Corvette's going to run, or your 2015 trucks.
Yeah. Well, what is your number one selling product then?
I mean, it's definitely the harness. It's Gen 4, probably 4-speed.
Mm-hmm.
So Gen 4 with the 4L60 or 4L80, and at this point, probably 4L80, because the 4L60s, get a bad rap.
I mean, rightfully so, right?
I wish that more of these manufacturers would still build straight drive vehicles.
Yep.
But I guess, everybody's like, oh, well, the computers that run these automatics are so much more efficient in the driving. But it's like my wife, when we did her Subaru a few years ago for SEMA, she's like, I have to have a straight drive. It's what she's rode motorcycles. Like, she's like, I like driving that.
Yep.
And me, on the other hand, when I drove a 10-speed Pepsi truck forever, and it's like, when I get off work, I just want to put it in gear and go. I don't want to deal with the clutch.
Yeah, I've got the 10-speed automatic race truck now, and it's kind of, not that it's boring, but there's less to do. So I'm focusing on my left foot brake now.
Well, what is your next big part or project that PSI is looking at doing? Do you have a new part that you're in production getting ready to come out now, or hopes to?
Yeah, I mean, we had showed the more motorsports, like disconnectable youth block. What's the proper word for it? Something that's configurable at LS Fest, and that's the thing we're working on now, is making it work as easy as possible for all those different computers John mentioned. And if you change injectors, things like that, it's going to be easier to swap.
Yeah.
So not just for the race crowd, but they're obviously the, stuff that looks cool and racy and is easy when you have to remove an engine, stuff like that makes it easier. That harness that's disconnectable is the next thing for us. Obviously, luckily, GM's putting more money into an engine plant, so I could sleep a little easier right now. It's not all electric Silverados and whatever the Mustang was called. What's it called?
The
Mach-E.
Mach-E, yeah.
Yeah. So now you mentioned Nissan and stuff earlier. What is the one completely off the norm harness that you guys have that you're like, well, we don't need to do that? And then once you did it, you're like, okay, well, that's actually going to do better than what we thought.
I mean, the Nissan stuff is shockingly popular, and we deal with a company close to us. It's actually a guy we used to work with. He started a company doing Nissan swaps. He's more on the hardware side of it, where he's doing adapter brackets and he sells clutches, and he basically makes it a real plug and play, real slick way to put an LS. And now he's doing some Hemi stuff and things of that nature into Nissans. And we make harnesses for him, and I didn't think it would be so popular, to be perfectly honest with you.
That's big in the drift world, though.
Yeah, but the drift guys can get away with a standalone harness. They don't need a true plug and play. I want my cruise control and HVAC and all that stuff to work. Yeah, I mean, so again, that's to what Joe's point earlier about like the cannon plug design, where you can, it's disconnectable at the firewall. There are markets. There are markets within this market that you have to be aware of. And then it's such a labor intensive process to make a harness, and you only have so much skilled labor to do it. You have to carefully pick where you want to attack. So like, we could ask 10 different people and get 10 different answers on what they want out of a harness. And
yeah, I mean, internally, right, they'd like us to do
like,
can you say it? Like a Maserati harness. LS swap Maserati.
And what's the demand on that?
Zero.
The Nissan Infinity stuff, surprisingly, they're like the only Japanese company that's rear drive. All their sedans are rear base. One just doing the all-wheel drive stuff or rear drive. So it's cool when you see an Infinity M, whatever M class, or a G35 or any of those things running around with the swap. Yeah. But I mean, we've had them with customers and all kinds of stuff, and 911s and airplanes. The airboat stuff's pretty cool. Down in Florida, and happened to be, go for one of those boat rides, see the gators and stuff, and the guy had was running our stuff, so that was pretty cool.
Did you just notice it when you got on the boat?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's right. That's the cool thing about having a business. You go somewhere, someone sees your shirt, you see their shirt. I was in Moab doing the Jeep tour, and that guy was running our stuff. The guy doing the Jeep tour, LS swap Jeep stuff. That kind of thing's cool. It used to be that way when we worked on the airplane stuff. Every airplane that went on, I'm like, well, I had a part in this. So, that kind of stuff is the plane that landed on the Hudson River.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, they're finally, someone finally landed on the water.
There was a successful water landing. It was like the first ever.
Now that works.
Yeah.
So how do people find you guys online? What's your website, your social media stuff, where they can interact with you?
So we're PSIconversion.com. That's our website.
No S.
Yeah, no S on it. It's singular. PSI Conversion.
Okay.
And then Instagram is Wired by PSI. We used to be PSI Conversion, and the account got hacked, and it was a giant ordeal. So now we're organically, slowly but surely building our brand back up, but it's Wired by PSI.
Okay.
We have, that's Instagram. We have a YouTube channel. Same way. We've got maybe 15, 20 videos. Most of them are tech videos. How to identify what engine you have, how to figure out what gear ratio you have in your rear end, how to tell Gen 4 from Gen 5, all kinds of stuff on there.
Yeah.
Stuff to make your install easier.
Yeah, and even the website. Like, the website has tons of tech info on it. The stuff that we've learned over the years. This works with this doesn't work with that. What's true ignition power in your Nova as opposed to accessory power. That's the number one thing people don't realize. It's like, well, I turned the key on and I had 12 volts, but then I crank it and it won't start. Well, you're in an accessory port 9 times out of 10, not an ignition port. There's a difference.
Well, I know I mentioned about like the magazine and online stuff. I guess in the years y'all been doing this, your advertising plan has probably changed quite a bit as well. And I'm guessing it's pretty heavily social media based now, correct?
Wish it was more social media based, but yeah, yeah. I
Yeah, I mean, with social media expense and then
shows.
shows. For years, it was LS1 Tech Forum, and you had to pay to get your name mentioned on there. You still do.
So you
We
guys get quite a few shows other than the LS Fest?
Yeah, so there's 3 LS Fests every year. We do those, and we do some good guys shows or Dino's Get Down. You've heard of that, I'm sure.
Yep.
That kind
I
of
was
stuff.
there
Yeah.
that show last year made me decide to build the Blazer. So
Okay.
that show cost me a lot of money.
Yeah,
And I'll be back this year with the Blazer too. So
yeah. I mean, if we had,
And then a couple of good guys shows. So
yeah, if we had more time, I mean, shows are great. I mean, you really get to meet the end user. You get to understand even just geographically how the market works. You know, people in
different
Arizona
regions.
and Nevada are different than people, you know, the way they're building in
Yeah.
Texas or in Kentucky.
Well, I'll definitely have to try to link up with you guys at a show next year because once the Blazer's done for SEMA, I'm staying out in Vegas for another week doing Dino's, and I'm hitting as many events as I can. I've done this for 30 years. I could care less about a $20 trophy. I'm there to hang out and to have companies I work with product be used for the
Sure.
like I was at in Alabama last weekend for Battle Alabama, and Beltec Suspension wanted to use I call it my daily driver, my little Ford Maverick,
Oh, I
because
saw
they're
that.
getting ready to release the kit, the lowering kit for that. So it's like, do you want to come down? I'm like, yeah. I was like, well, you want to show? And I'm like, no, I'm here for you guys. You do what you need, which was good because their R&D guy got to take it for a drive and there's some stuff they got to tweak. And he's like, man, he's like, I usually don't get to firsthand get a production part and test drive it. Usually it's all the pre-production
Sure.
stuff. So for him to drive it was like, he's like, yeah, that helped us now. He was already making graphs and changing stuff while I was there at the show. So hopefully I'll be able to, link up with you guys some next year. And
we look forward to it.
Absolutely.
like I said, I appreciate the, the help on this one, and looking forward to actually getting my hands on the stuff from you guys here soon. So I'll definitely keep you in the loop.
If you need anything, reach out. You know, we'll help you out, whether it's our tech support or it's Joe or I or somebody in sales. You know, we're all there to answer the phone.
In the box of my builder's shop right now, so I'm itching to go back out. So
and that's out in Arizona. Where are you?
The next phase is mocking up the engine, make sure everything works. So your guys will be in the next phase of that. So.
Great.
And where's the shop? It's in Arizona.
Outside Las Vegas and Henderson.
Okay. All right.
Yes. So everybody's like, "Oh, you're going to Vegas to play?" Like, no, I don't even go in. The airport's the only part in Vegas I go to. We're staying in Henderson. Like I stay at his house, shops at his house. But you pull out of his neighborhood and like go to the top of the hill, and you overlook the strip. So
nice.
Of course, I'm in like, oh wow, this is nice out here. And then he comes to my house and he's like, wow, y'all got trees in North Carolina.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys coming on and discussing your story, and I look forward to getting up with you guys more as it comes.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, thanks for hooking up with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
All right.